Alright, it is time for Shannon Vlogs number 18 with a Shakespeare update. Hey everyone, it is Shannon. I caved and finally did a Shakespeare card. I think it's kind of official that I'm, working through Shakespeare since I'm on, how many? I think three of 38, and I feel like I'll do more. Anyway, so catching up with stuff, I read and watched both Titus Andronicus and Richard II. And yeah, so let's start with Titus. Okay, so I read Titus. I had seen previous versions of Titus, so I was fairly knowledgeable on the story of Titus. It is a brutal story. One of the reasons I chose it is because it's a brutal story, not because I like brutal stories, but because I wanted to sort of get through it and not really have to think about it after. So it's kind of weird reasoning why I start with, like, I wouldn't say it was the hardest. No, Richard II, out of the three that I've read so far, Richard II was the hardest. Titus was not. Titus was actually really good in terms of I was very much able to understand what was going on. I'm sure that is partially due to the fact I've seen other versions. I've seen versions of the play performed in film format. One was a play. One was something on like a PBS type thing years and years ago when I was like middle school maybe, or high school. I don't know. It's pretty brutal. It's a revenge story. I don't know how often the theme of revenge comes up in Shakespeare's plays, but it is here and it is brutal. And when I say brutal, I mean really, really, really brutal. Bloody, maiming, just, sexual assault. It is just, and more, and it just keeps going. So, in terms of thematically, definitely revenge is what the main theme of the play. There's also, for me, I felt like there was a question of madness. I wasn't sure whether or not Titus is mad, like insane, or if he's playing mad. It's unclear. And I think it's one of those things that actually is great about Shakespeare is that there's different interpretations, and I think an actor could easily play it one of each ways. Now, before I jumped into watching the Julie Taymor version, which is excellent, I looked online to see if there was any sort of, I like to try some sort of theater, Shakespeare in the Park type of things. For Titus, I found a couple, not outside. I can't imagine doing this one outside. Oh no, there was one that was outside. And then there was a couple that were inside, some with interesting interpretations. There is a military theme in this play, and it's sort of like the reigning, Titus is a war hero. He comes back. He doesn't want to be involved in sort of government, but there is government, and then there's this sort of the Goths come in and they're prisoners, and so they're sort of like I don't know if they're supposed to be pagan, but they're sort of like, rule breakers or whatever. Anyway, it really just feels like they lost and like the other people won. Anyway, so it was interesting to see. I watched a couple bits of some of the different versions on YouTube, and usually the Goths were very gothic, current day interpretations of gothic, lots of black, lots of skulls, lots of lace-up corsets and high heels for Tamora, like that kind of thing. And then it was the different interpretations of military. One was pretty standard current, and then the other one was what was it? It was interesting. It was different. Oh, it was bikers. So that is an interesting, different choice, I'm sure. Oh my god, what's that show? What's that show that everyone loves? With Charlie Hunnam in it. That has something to do with the, current day, let's do bikers as the bad guys kind of thing, with structure. Anyway, so I felt good about understanding the play. It is brutal. I think, when I look through, there are so many characters that have their names crossed off, and that's when they get killed, their names get crossed off, and it is, almost everyone. It is almost everyone. All of these characters ended up dying. So that puts it in the tragedy column of the Shakespeare interpretations. And then in terms of the film, why I decided to watch this version of Titus over watching one of the sort of Shakespeare in the Park ones is that I didn't feel like I was really you know, I didn't feel the performances were that great, and this one is pretty meaty, and I wanted to see it with great performances. Also, one of the weird things about this one is they often seemed to cast one of Tamora's sons as a woman, and I understand in Shakespeare's plays there are not always tons of female characters, but in that particular dynamic, I do not understand why you would cast it as a woman, and it was in several of the ones I tried to watch, so I don't know what that's about. So, but with this film version, it's great. I had seen it before, and it's just, Julie Taymor is just such an interesting director. The visual style is beautiful. You can obviously tell, like, from this cover alone, which is what made me wanted to watch it, like, years ago. This is from, when is this from? It's gotta be, yeah, 2000. I remember seeing it in the Blockbuster at Queen and Spadina, and every time I walk by, I'm like, I want to watch that, but the person I was with at the time never wanted to watch it. So what can you say? So I never won that argument. But later on, now I did win the argument because I get to watch whatever I want. That was mean. Okay, I'm not going there. Where am I going with this? Titus, it was great. A lot of familiar faces in here other than Anthony Hopkins as Titus, who was quite good. Jessica Lange as Tamora, I thought she was good. I understood the character more. She's a bit of a finicky character. She is, you know, she is the queen of the Goths and is captured and prisoner and then like marries the head of state, basically. So it's kind of like, why would you do that? But I guess that's better than being a prisoner, I guess. But I did understand her character more from watching it in this version. There's also other familiar faces. Alan Cumming, I'm like, he's in just so much. I always know him from Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. James Frain, who is on True Blood, and Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. I definitely did not know who James Frain or Jonathan Rhys-Meyers were when I first watched this. So it's very stylistically gorgeous. It is over the top. It is just full of zeal. And I really understood, especially the political structure in terms of who was ruling and why they were doing what they were doing made a lot more sense when I watched it this way. I still am not sure how I feel about Titus and if he is mad or not, and this version I don't think helped clear that up. There's a great villain. Oh my gosh, what was his name? I forgot. And the guy who plays him in this is amazing. Aaron. Oh my gosh. He was amazing. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. So there you go. So that's Titus. And then moving on to Richard II. Now this one, the inspiration to read this was because I saw this BBC TV series, The Hollow Crown, which has the first 4 histories of Shakespeare's plays together. And I thought the actors are amazing, so this would be a really good, you know, read and then watch pairing, and so that's why I read Richard II. Now, the histories are based on historical figures, so Richard II was actually a king. I am not familiar with the history of it, so I was reading it from the perspective of just that it's a character. So I wasn't sort of, you know, looking up historical tests to see accuracy or anything like that. I was just going from the play. And I found the play hard to understand, the hardest by far of the 3. Richard II is not, I did not find him to be an easy character to understand, but as I, you know, watched the film version and read up on it, I understand that that's actually makes a lot of sense because he did sort of do things that at whim and without tons of reasoning, which is very hard in terms of finding a character's motivation. Because they just seem erratic. But, you know, I did end up eventually looking up about, you know, the actual person, and he became a king at 10 and only reigned until he was 18. So when you're talking about him as the king, you know, that's a very young king. One of the things that also didn't particularly speak to me, that's a theme in the play, is that he sort of feels like he is ruling by divine right, and so there's a lot of religious you know, themes and sentiments. Not a lot, but like in his speeches, it definitely plays a big part of it, although the rest of the people involved don't seem to speak to it very much. It's just Richard. So in terms of the film, or I guess it's a TV series version, Ben Whishaw plays Richard II, and he is quite good. I really like him as an actor. I've liked him in everything I've seen him in. But again, I find the character pretty inaccessible in terms of he just seems kind of strange in terms of why he would do what he would do, but that seems to be the case of the truth. One of the things that I did pick up on by watching this that actually isn't in the Wikipedia entry or some of the other entries, although people I've spoken to and on Goodreads, I've definitely found out that one of the things about this play is that this character is gay. I did not pick that up by reading it. By watching this version of it, it's very clear. And so that was like, whoa, didn't pick up on it at all. Although reading one of the speeches, I was like, when I saw it, I'm like, oh, there it is. That's what he's talking about, you know? So there you go. I did really, the motivations from the characters were a little bit easier to understand in here, but not tons. However, the speeches were amazing, especially by Richard II. Just really, wow. But it is kind of weird watching it in this version because you can feel it from how they set the camera and how it moves in and how it sort of builds up. I was like, oh, this is a big speech. So I kind of, in some ways, I kind of feel like I'm reacting to noticing that over reacting to the pure acting. But that's one of the things that happens when you watch a play in another format. You know, there's more, the director is showing you like, hey, this is a big moment, you know, and because a lot of it felt more regular. I don't know if that's a good way to term it, like just sort of just normal. This feels like, you know, people on a beach or people in a castle or people having a conversation, and then there was like zoom in, big artistry, you know, stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, this is going to be big, and it was great. But I don't know, but I could feel it in the energy of it. So that was a bit weird. But you know, the acting was really good. Of course, Ben Whishaw was quite good. I actually thought I thought I would like this one a little bit better, but I think it's that inaccessibility with this weirdness with the character, and his, how he acts so, you know, like some of the decisions he makes doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It also does feel like it's leading into the next in the series, which is Henry IV Part 1, because it introduces the character of Henry. And so, you know, like so I don't know, like I thought I would enjoy it more. There were definitely things that I did enjoy. There's some great performances in here. I was gonna say Jean-Luc Picard is in it. Patrick Stewart is in it, and he is great. David Suchet is amazing. Oh my god, he was so good. For me, he was the best actor in it. Like, for me with Shakespeare, what I take that as, how I define that as, is that I just understand what he's saying. I understood him. Every single word that he said, I understood. Other people, I might have to work on it a bit more. Same with Patrick Stewart. I did understand. When he was talking, I understood him. But David Suchet, he's just freaking awesome. And he plays Poirot. That's one of his big roles. I also loved Rory Kinnear as Henry Bolingbroke. Oh my goodness. He was really good. He was really, really, really good. And he also, if you watch Penny Dreadful, he is on that. He's in season 1 and season 2. I don't know if it's going to be renewed. I'm still in the middle of season 2. So there you go. There is Richard II and Titus Andronicus. I was going to say which my favorite is, but they're just all so different. And now I've read and watched a comedy, a tragedy, and a history, and I was gonna switch back to comedies after this just to lighten things up, but I gotta know what happens. So I'm gonna read Henry IV Part 1 and then watch the version in the Hollow Crown. So there is my Shakespeare update. That was way longer than I expected. I totally should have broken that in to do vlogs. I am sorry. Thank you for sticking with me. Let me know, have you read or watched either of these, or if there's any other versions of Richard II or Titus Andronicus that you would recommend. All right, thanks for watching.